So another aspect of the devil that's important to consider here is, why is it considered evil? Like, why has the devil been vilified? And if the devil's all about freedom and enlightenment and illumination, then why has he been vilified? Why is it considered an evil or bad character in our mythology? And the answer, I mean, is pretty simple. It's not my invention by any means, but basically, if we were to be a society where everybody flouted the rules of society, if they flouted convention, at least the fear, and again it's fear, the fear would be that we would have an anarchy, and that anarchy would automatically be bad. Which, given the number of other fears and other things in ourselves that are not necessarily so well integrated yet, that may very well be true. It may be a legitimate fear. It may be a truth-based fear. But ultimately, that may or may not actually be true. An anarchic society may not necessarily be one of destruction and horrible things for everyone, because if we are all truly enlightened, and if we are, even if we're outside of society's conventions, in that enlightenment, in that deep knowing, in that deep being, we also will probably recognize our interconnection with other beings, our interconnection with ourselves, and our role in the happiness of other beings. So that's kind of the other side of the devil, is kind of, once you step out of that box, you start to see, oh yeah, everything is interconnected. Like the wheel, everything is interconnected, and how I behave affects how another person feels. And so we're kind of, right now, I think, in general spiritual realms, not all of them, but in certain spiritual realms, we're still caught up a little bit in personal accountability and the personal role that we have in things. And that's an absolutely crucial stage in development. But it's not the end of it. We are responsible for ourselves and our actions, and yet, at the same time, we are not in full control of every single thing that happens in our lives. There's interconnectivity. There are other people that are also in control of those things, and it's the interplay, the relationship between one person's control over their life and their immediate surrounding, and another person's control over their life and their immediate surrounding, that intersect and affect the degree of control one person has over the other, and vice versa. And so I think the negative aspect of the devil is when those spheres clash, and when one tries to control the other by either putting them in a box or forcing them to step out of the box that they're in. So that's where the danger of the devil comes in. And so because of that fear that if we were as free as the devil kind of represents we can be, that free of a society, that anarchistic type of society might actually be dangerous for people. And it could be. So the reason for vilifying the devil and personifying the evils of mankind in a character is to help keep that in check, because it serves society, and it serves those who run society best when people are kept under control. And this goes right back to organized religions and churches, not just our Western religions, but also in many Eastern religions, the priestly hierarchy, the priestly caste. wants to have that control over being the intermediary between the people and God. And the devil says, no, you don't need an intermediary. God is right there. Spirituality is right there. You don't need organized religion. You don't need a church to talk through or to go through in order to reach illumination. Illumination is here and now in everything, in the physical, sensual, carnal pleasures, all the way to everything else. So, in a way, that ties back into the beauty of Venus rising at the dawn and bringing illumination. Venus rising at the dawn, or just before the dawn, is a hint that there's beauty, there's illumination in everything. Even at the darkest part of the night, which is, they say, the darkest time is before the dawn. Even at the darkest part of the night, there's illumination and there's beauty in that. And so the devil is kind of asking us to recognize that. I could go on and on. Like I already said, I could go on and on about the devil. But it's in certain people's, when questioning, as I was just talking about too, in questioning society's roles and society's rules, it's important also to question, why are those rules there? Who benefits the most from these rules? Are these rules really there to keep us well and to keep us safe and to keep us happy? Or are those rules to keep us under control? Are those rules there to take advantage of us in some ways? And sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Some of those societal rules, societal conventions are there to keep us safe, or at least they start out that way, and then maybe they get twisted and distorted, and someone figures out a way to take advantage of that rule or that law or that convention, so that they benefit while others suffer. And so the devil is all about recognizing those things, recognizing how is someone benefiting while you suffer, or how are you benefiting while someone else suffers, and trying to equalize that a bit, trying to make it a little bit fair, and recognizing sometimes when someone's benefiting because of your suffering, you can change that. You can stop that. That doesn't mean that the other person no longer benefits, but maybe you can change it in a way where you are not the sufferer, you are not the oppressed, and that doesn't have to be by suppressing the other. It can be a little bit more equal and interconnected, because again, if the suppressor becomes the oppressor, then nothing's really changed. the roles have changed, but nothing really has changed. The balance has just shifted to something. Has just shifted to the same balance, but a different person wielding each side of the balance. So it's not a new cycle; it's just a repetition of the same cycle. So much to say about the devil, but I'm going to keep it there. So the devil is freedom and illumination, but also a total break of convention, stepping outside of society, stepping outside of the rules and expectations of us. That is usually seen as a bad thing. And when you do that, you have to be aware that people are going to see you in a different light, and they're going to see you as being weird or an outcast or somehow evil, possibly, or somehow not part of them, not related to them, and they're going to otherize you. And you have to be aware of that, and that's part of their natural aspect of their process, and so you can't blame them for that either. You don't have to take responsibility for that, and you don't have to excuse it, but you don't have to blame them for it either. Take it in its context. So complicated, so wonderfully complicated with the devil. So we'll move on. But an extension of that then is the tower, and the tower is the destruction, the crumbling of that structure. Destruction, structure, destruction. So it's the crumbling of that structure. It's the total dismantling of the structure through fire. We have fire there, and the structure is earth, and so that destruction, that destroying component is really important to be able to rebuild something new. So where death was endings, death in a lot of ways is more peaceful. It's just kind of the natural ending of things. Sometimes the ending of things is abrupt, sometimes it's unnatural or seemingly unnatural, but the death process is perfectly natural. There is nothing unnatural about death. Every day our cells are dying and being replenished, and that process is completely natural. The tower is much more abrupt and a little bit less peaceful. It's a little bit more forceful and immediate and disruptive. It's so disruptive. Why is the world falling down around me? Why is everything crumbling around me? Well, like I say, that structure has to be destroyed. So the combination of fire and earth. So the fire destroys what's been built up in earth, and then through the middle, right up the middle, we have air and illumination. So consciousness, but it's the wisdom side of consciousness. It's not so much necessarily the intellect, although that's part of it. To rebuild, you need an intellect. But it's really the wisdom that comes, the clarity that comes from destruction. So in the wheel, when I talked about the glass falling off the table and shattering, there are a lot of Zen parables about speaking about when the pot breaks, when the pot shatters, as being an allegory for the moment of illumination, the moment of enlightenment, where a person can be preparing all their lives for enlightenment, and then at one moment the pot shatters. And there's a story about a peasant woman carrying water bottles, not like the plastic water bottles we know, but jugs, clay pots of water uphill, a task that she did every day, day in, day out. The peasant woman's probably, somewhere in her 50s or 60s, and so she's been doing this task, this chore, probably since she was a child, and that daily chore has been occurring alongside her spiritual practice, that she's been meditating every day, she's been doing all of the various practices prescribed by her spiritual guide, her priest or her guru or whatever the case is. And then one day the rope on the bar that she's carrying her jugs of water in breaks, and the jug falls to the floor, and the jug shatters, and water goes everywhere. And in that moment, in that shattering of the jug, she becomes enlightened. So it's a momentary thing. It's an instantaneous thing. Enlightenment, in that case, occurs instantaneously. But it doesn't occur instantaneously because it's fast or a fast process. It occurs instantaneously because it reaches a point after building and building and building from the foundation, up and up and up and up and up. She reached the point where, shatter, breakthrough, everything made sense. And in that moment, it said that she heard babies crying, and she heard, she was aware of people taking their last breath, and so the whole cycle of life and death, and she could hear the birds sing, and she could, everything kind of open for her, consciousness completely open for her, in that manifestation sense that we talked about way early. And so it's that sudden breakthrough, that sudden shattering of everything we know, and the clarity that is possible within that doesn't necessarily happen. Sometimes everything shatters and we don't understand it, and there's no clarity. It's total confusion. This would be, in that case, in this deck, the Tower reversed, where just darkness is at the top. A little bit of confusion, a little bit of mental stuff at the top, but darkness. It's confusion. Whereas right side up, that destruction goes from confusion to clarity, right up through the middle. So that's the Tower. It's pretty self-explanatory. Or this can also be seen in a traditional symbology of a lightning bolt, and the two halves of the Tower, the two people jumping off the Tower, or the crown of the Tower splitting. All of those things are kind of in there.